Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the third installment of the Decade of Downtown in Review. My name is Dax Moreno. I'm the Chief Talent Officer over at Tech Block and Tech Talent Central. And over the past few weeks, you've had some really fantastic conversations with the likes of Julian Castro, Luis Filo over at Par Level. And now we have someone that can only be described as the change agent. We've had the dreamer, we've had the builder, and now we're going to talk to somebody that has gone into a place and an organization and a vision and really put a unique stamp on it that helped accelerate the Decade of Downtown to a tremendous, tremendous heights. It's my pleasure now to introduce all of you to Jim Perschbach, President and CEO over at Port San Antonio.
Dex, thanks so much. Appreciate being here.
It's great to have you. I appreciate you making the time. I know that there have been a number of announcements happening every week, like the wins are piling up. So I really appreciate you taking the time and being able to join us for a conversation. And, maybe we can dive right in if you're ready.
Sure.
All right, great. So Jim, what I'd love to, I guess, first start off with is, let's go to the roots of maybe your story and kind of where this change agent capability and this vision this visionary components of what you bring to the table may have started. I was reading through your bio and I would love to hear a little bit more of your story about, it sounds like you went to law school, you were an attorney, you had some fun there, I'm guessing. Talk to me a little bit about those days and those earlier stages of your career.
Oh, you start off with what everybody's interested in. My life just isn't that interesting, Dax. Yeah, I had the advantage of growing up really all over the world. Was born in North Carolina, but that was just a figment of history there. Spent a lot of time in Israel and London growing up, California, Pennsylvania. Went to college, and all I ever wanted to do was go work for the Disney company or work for an airline. If you had told me back in high school that I was going to wind up being a lawyer or being in a development like this, I would have just looked at you funny. Things have a way of working out different. So next thing you know, I'm in law school. First day of law school, I say the one thing I don't ever want to do is go try a case. I'm here, but I'm not actually going to practice it. First summer after in law school, you get your first internship. I wound up getting put into the trial law practice, and there you are. But life has a way of working itself out. Wound up doing an awful lot with aviation and defense. Had good fortune to be transferred here to San Antonio because of the aviation and defense presence. And really, it's been a wonderful opportunity to be part of a wonderful community. So you asked me a question, the most boring question to start off with, which was tell me about you. That's about me.
Well, it's interesting. I wouldn't have imagined the aspirations of Disney or what was it that you wanted to do at Disney? Was it something in the behind the scenes? Was it animation, maybe voice acting?
No, it was the parks.
Oh, wow.
It was absolutely Disney parks. I went to Disneyland in 1976. I'm really, really old, Dax. And it scared the pants off me. I went on that Pirates of the Caribbean ride, and I was absolutely convinced that they were shooting cannonballs at me. And because of that, I wanted to not be scared of it. Now, in my defense, I was 5 or 6 years old. I can't remember how old I was. And I found out how cool those amusement rides were. Went over to Knott's Berry Farm, and they had the Aero Corkscrew. And it was cool. It was the first looping roller coaster that you had anywhere in the world that worked and didn't kill people. This was even before the revolution at Magic Mountain. Couldn't get on it, but wanted to get on it. And then when I started to learn more about what actually went on behind the scenes at Disney, I thought it was the absolute coolest thing. It was that combination of land use and building use management, getting people to do things, and frankly, just creating the environment. And I thought it was fantastic. It was showmanship. I actually had a job offer to go to Disney coming out of college, but they wanted me to go to Euro Disney, and for a host of reasons that are unimportant, didn't wind up happening. Got sent off to law school instead.
Well, thankfully for us in San Antonio, you took that route because you ultimately wound up at Port San Antonio. And there's something in there that you said, which I think is really interesting and was really pivotal in the decade of downtown, which is placemaking.
Yep.
And you talked just about that right there. You thought how interesting this space, how it was used and developed to create an experience for a consumer. We're going to talk about that in a little bit because I'm starting to draw a little bit of lines to these dots throughout your career. Um, I'd love to understand, when you joined the port in Port San Antonio in 2014, I believe, you joined as the executive business development officer, if I'm not mistaken,
Mm-hmm.
correct?
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. And when you joined there, what was the I guess the influence of the decade of downtown? Was that something people were talking about? Was it viewed as, hey, this is a real thing that we should try to kind of align with, or was it kind of viewed as something intended for someone else?
Uh, I think if you would have asked anybody at the port 5, 6 years ago, whenever it was I came here, they wouldn't have cared about downtown. It was absolutely inconsequential to anything that was going on. And frankly, I think if you would have asked the people downtown what was going on at the port, a lot of them couldn't even tell you where it is. We're 8 minutes away from downtown. We're not that far, but there was a disconnect. And what struck me was a missed opportunity in San Antonio from silos. San Antonio is blessed by having tremendous capabilities in a lot of areas. There are very few places in the country that have the resources that we do, but they haven't been well connected. So look at downtown. You have a tremendous tech district downtown. I don't just mean you as tech block, I mean you figuratively. There are some amazing things that are going on downtown. You mentioned par level. Certainly what Geekdom has done, the investment in people, the investment in education down there is really eye-opening. But look at the medical center. We have tremendous capabilities in the medical center, some uh, world-changing innovations, the heart stent coming out of there, the kinetic concepts bed. There are some amazing things. Treating wounded warriors and what we've done at now San Antonio Medical Center is amazing capabilities. SWIRI and the port, we're neighbors down here. SWIRI controls more satellites and has done more deep space exploration than most countries. In fact, a lot of what NASA has done is controlled out of an entity just straight up the street, right here in San Antonio. And Port San Antonio, our little neck of the woods down here, we've been working on airplanes and doing signals intelligence and cyber for over 100 years. There are innovations that have come out of this property that the world takes for granted. Everything from airplane landing gear and seat belts, which are just nice to have, to communications techniques, to cyber innovations. The challenge is connecting those up. The world has been for a long, long time what I call a component-based world. And they've talked about industries. They've talked about the aerospace industry, the manufacturing industry, the medical industry. But what we're seeing now is a switch into a systems-based world where we not only all get connected, but the application of technologies to it is changing the way we think, changing the way we work, and frankly, making the world better. The challenge, Dax, is you can't disrupt an industry. You can't make an industry better if you don't understand the industry. There's a story I like to tell, and forgive me for getting long-winded. A couple years ago, I was speaking at an Aero Engines conference and was talking to some friends of mine with one of the airlines. They had just spent some outrageous amount of money, I don't remember how much it was, on an app with the Silicon Valley company. The idea was they wanted to make their mechanics more efficient. And they said, Jim, the app is fantastic. It works, it's beautiful, it's a great interface, it's a fantastic tool. The problem is the people who designed it have no idea how engines work. They have no idea what an aerospace technician needs. So it's garbage. It is completely useless to us. And this was right around the time that I came over here to this organization, Dax, and I said, wouldn't it be amazing if we could connect up the people who understand how to write an app, how to bring that technology with the people who understand how an engine works, how an airplane works. Because if you get these people working together and bringing their talents and their capabilities together, what you are going to wind up with is a solution that is going to not only make a lot of money for whoever develops that solution, but is going to make the world better. It's going to increase that share of the pie. It's going to increase the efficiencies. And that has been the model that we followed at the port. And what excites me is to see these pieces coming together in San Antonio.
That encapsulated so many talking points. I have a lot of questions to follow that, because that's tremendous. You nail a few things there. The missed opportunities with downtown really kind of standing out more than anything, and also acknowledging the fact that, in so many ways, San Antonio's based around bubbles is kind of how we call it, colloquially, I guess, amongst each other. There's these neighborhoods, or there's these groups or organizations or territories almost. And it's not surprising to hear that something so technologically centric like Port San Antonio did feel like it was on its own and working from its own thing, the same way downtown felt, being singled out during that. And it's interesting that you're an adherent to this an awareness of component-based to systems-based, because that's really what this is. San Antonio is a system. Why aren't we all working together? Why isn't there more cohesion? And I think that really says a lot about you seeing and identifying an area of opportunity at Port San Antonio to start understanding how to maybe connect some of these parts a little bit better together. So I would love to kind of dive in a little bit further into that thought and hear where you started the transition from that business development leadership role really into the main saddle seat of president and CEO, and really helping direct the charge and shape the vision. Because I'll have to tell you, over the last couple of years, it has been a tremendous difference in how I think Port San Antonio is not only viewed internally among the technology folks in San Antonio, but also externally to folks visiting here as well. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Well, it was relatively simple. It was exactly what you said in terms of connecting. And we made two decisions that were very fateful, both of which were tremendous risks by our board, both of which were something that traditional real estate minds would not have done. The first one was the San Antonio Museum of Science and Technology. David Monroe had this tremendous collection of artifacts that he had created, and he had one passion in his life, which is he wanted to inspire people that there were opportunities out there, opportunities in education, opportunities in invention, opportunities in intervention, and was looking for a home. He had put it not too far away from his home up on the north side, but was looking for a permanent place. And I remember I got an invitation from a mutual friend to go up and see his facility. It was around Thanksgiving of 2017, maybe 2016, I can't remember which. And left and called my dad. My dad was an aerospace and defense executive, had been an intelligence officer. And I said, Dad, I'm going to do something that's either going to be world changing or is going to get me fired. But we're going to go and we are going to offer David a place to put this museum. And I don't think we're going to even charge him for it. Called him because a lot of the stuff that I had seen in David's office was stuff that I remember Dad using. Old video over internet devices back before anybody in the public knew what the internet was, intelligence devices, that type of stuff. Wow. Well, we did it. And the conventional wisdom was, well, you guys are nuts. There's no foot traffic down there. How on earth are you going to have a museum? What is the point of doing this silly thing? And from a real estate perspective, that's not a good real estate move. Why are you putting somebody in there for essentially nothing?
Yeah. And not charging rent.
Not charging rent.
Yeah.
Well, here's what happened. We are 8 minutes away from downtown. And people started to come down and see what David was doing, because it is a lot more exciting to go down and see somebody who has an Enigma machine and Tesla coils and David's passion for engineering. And they realized, one, I don't need a passport or a long-haul flight to get down there. It is 8 minutes from downtown. It's 12 minutes from the medical center. It's right here. And I noticed we started to have robotics meetups down here. We had people coming down here who never in a million years would have come down here. We had some founders who were down here who had great ideas, who were looking for spaces. And we had the conversations about why it made sense for them to be here. It became an attractor. It became something that brought people here and inspired them and frankly created that connectivity. All of a sudden, it was no longer the port's down there and it's just doing something with airplanes and the military. That ain't for us. You know, we had people together. The second fateful thing that we did was what we called the tech office building. Nobody had built an office building on the southwest side of San Antonio. And we went to the board and we said, we want you to let us build this office building, completely spec. And we want to build a building that doesn't look like the southwest side of San Antonio. We want a building that looks like something that could host people doing high-end cyber and engineering work. Board did what boards do. They went out and hired a whole bunch of experts. And every expert and consultant they asked said, this is the dumbest thing we ever heard of. Don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. Nobody's going to come. Well, I guess I'm charming because we talked the board into it anyway. And that building leased up in about a year, give or take, with a bunch of blue chip clients. And it's not because of any type of magic. It was, we knew one thing. If you create the awareness of the opportunities in an area and create that bridge, which was done with SAMSAT, was done with David Monroe, was done with all the meetups that grew out of that, the organic connectivity to people throughout San Antonio, you are going to create an environment that attracts business. And so that building leased up, we've got another building going up, we've got a school, but it all comes back to connections. It comes back to connecting people. Because if you can connect and converge people and focus their talents, then amazing things can happen. The challenge, Dax, you know, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm some sort of genius or magic man for making this happen. There's a lot of people who are doing this all throughout San Antonio, all throughout the country. And it's that incremental growth. Every time you build a connection point, you create another bind, another opportunity to create commerce, to create education, to create business. And as I see that growing here in San Antonio, I see great things happening.
You know, there are, again, a few things that you really tapped into during that story. And I love hearing this because I feel like there's this hidden history of not just Port San Antonio, but also of these decisions and things that have happened over the years that you may see some articles fly by, but in the larger kind of grander scheme, you forget pivotal moments happen. I was there for SAMSAT. That was fantastic. David was awesome. I got to see a sneak preview. We had some events there. The Tesla coils were cool. If anybody watching this hasn't been down there, you need to go check it out. He's got some unbelievable, really innovative for the time technologies that you won't believe the dates of when they were used. You just won't believe it. You'll probably Google it immediately and he's right. They did all the research. And I also love that there's this reoccurring theme, and we touched a little bit on it in our second session with Par Level, which is, you know, when you create a space or you kind of fly the virtual flag and let people know there's opportunity here, just come and explore it. Time and again, our community has answered that call. So I do think there's something a little bit special to you having that vision, because it's really easy to look at the spreadsheet and go, yeah, you're right, that's a bad decision. But something entirely different to know that there is something special there, that you can give it an opportunity and space to grow. And the fact that you did that and you invested in a way that hadn't been invested in the Southwest side like that, I mean, it speaks for itself. You leased everything within a year. And I don't think enough people know that. Like, that space was gobbled up quickly, and you're continuing to grow and expand in that area as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, we've got another building that's twice the size of the first one going up, and that's been successful. In fact, we're about to launch our third building.
That's music to
It's
my ears.
3,600 jobs, 3,700 jobs in 2.5 years. It's more than that. Tens of thousands of people have gone through that SAMSAT museum. Young people who had no idea that these opportunities existed. And I want to talk about founders a little bit because this is Startup Week.
Yeah, please.
There are 2 companies on this campus that we wouldn't have without SAMSAT. The first one's a company called One Robotics. Those guys came down here because of the SAMSAT folks, because of who was associated with SAMSAT. And that's how we made the introduction. And we got to talking about them, talking about what they're doing. And they saw the potential that was here. They were developing a artificial intelligence supervised autonomy and sensor array for industrial robots that was going to allow them to have logistics capabilities. Well, when they saw that we could give them that little figurative garage down here, not for free, you know, they're a valuable business, but give them an opportunity to connect up with industry, to show themselves off where the potential buyers are, we were lucky enough to convince them to be here. It was 4 guys and a dream when they first came down here. Now they're in the Wall Street Journal. They're doing business with FedEx. They're continuing to grow. They're really one of our superstar customers on this property. And they've moved over into a brand new building right there at one of our biggest corners at 36th Street and Billy Mitchell. And we could not be more excited about these folks. Wouldn't have them here but for SAMSAT. And frankly, when they started to be so successful with private equity, their private equity wanted them to move. And I'm putting words in their mouths here, but they're building a network of connected robots with an artificial intelligence and supervised autonomy. Where better for them to be than on the same campus with some of the biggest cyber experts on the planet? We've all seen the movie about what happens when artificial.
That sounds like the beginning of Skynet, a little bit.
The other one is a company called Reckon Point. You know, wouldn't know them but for SAMSAT. Got to know Gabe and what he was doing back when Gabe was at somebody else's company doing his system in the off hours. And he's down there working with the SAMSAT folks, growing that company, was just identified by Aviation Week as being one of 8 startups in the world, that is the potential to change aviation. And this is, you talk about connectivity. Gabe's idea is a LiDAR distance measuring system that gets mounted on the back of a small robot. And his original idea was there are a lot of old buildings, think of downtown, where nobody has the blueprints anymore. And the traditional way of measuring that space is to send in a whole bunch of people with tape measures and lasers, take a bunch of measurements, upload it to CAD. It takes a lot of time and a lot of money. His robot allows you to do that not within seconds, but a lot closer to seconds than weeks, and upload it almost automatically within a centimeter or 2 of accuracy into a CAD. So it's tremendous efficiency. But you know why he's in Aviation Week? Aviation Week doesn't care about buildings. We took him to the MRO America show, one of the largest gatherings in the aviation industry. And we presented not real estate, not hangars, because everybody in the world has that. We presented the capabilities that we have on this campus in San Antonio. And I remember some folks coming over from one of the airlines and looking and saying, what's this do? How does this work? And they had the chance to talk to Gabe and have some conversations. And all of a sudden, the airline industry is realizing, with a couple of tweaks here and there, that's an application that we can use that makes us more efficient. It's valuable to us. Fast forward a little over a year, open up Aviation Week, 8 startups in the world changing aviation. There's a company from Israel, a company from Sweden, a company from the UK, and little old Reckon Point right on the list. That, Dax, is where there is tremendous potential. And forgive me, because this is where I get excited. A huge opportunity is with space. And this is where downtown comes in. People think of the Space Force as being something of a joke. Unfortunately, it's gotten politicized. But the real value is that the next level of human existence. The next level of capturing resources is going to involve at least orbit. Doesn't mean any human beings have to go up there, but whether it's wireless transmissions, wireless power generation, wireless commerce, a lot of that is going to be transacted through satellites. Here's the challenge. Traditionally, it has been very expensive to manufacture a satellite on Earth and launch it into orbit. If you're going to use a satellite for power generation, it's almost prohibitively expensive to do that. But if you could launch it from the moon, or if you could launch it in pieces and manufacture it robotically in space, then it becomes a lot more feasible to do.
Yeah.
Look at Reckon Point. Reckon Point has the ability to robotically survey a space. NASA is looking at using the lunar caves, the old lava tubes up on the moon, as being the basis for our future lunar exploration, our future lunar habitations. It's a lot easier to send a small robot up there to do it than it is to try and send a whole bunch of human beings. When it comes to robotic manufacturing, robots are blind and stupid. They can only do the same repetitive task in a very controlled environment. And if they get off, you've got to go in and reset them. What the +1 technology allows you to do is take a robot and place it in an uncontrolled environment with the supervised autonomy. Now, things like lunar manufacturing or even orbital manufacturing become much more potentially feasible. And over in SAMSAT, there's a group called the Wex Foundation, funded with an awful lot of money from NASA. And what they're doing is taking kids and scientists from the local environment, not so local environment, and they are developing a 3D printer. And Dax, you're going to say, we got 3D printers all over San Antonio. What's the big deal? Well, this one is grinding up basaltic rock, mixing it with a biological additive, and then 3D printing a habitation. Basaltic rock, because that's what the moon's made out of. So now you send up robotic rovers that can assemble this 3D printer, grind the rock, mix it with that biologic compound, and 3D print on top of that lunar cave that's been surveyed by, let's say, Reckon Point or Reckon Point's technology. Using the supervised autonomy system that's been developed by our friends at +1 Robotics, we can then get to a much more feasible point of being able to launch a satellite into orbit that can capture tremendous amounts of solar radiation and then wirelessly transmit that radiation, that solar power, back to Earth. If that happens, and all those pieces are potentially feasible, if you can find a way to connect all of that, then imagine what we've done with this planet. All the concerns we have about terrestrial power generation and climate change, gone in a heartbeat. There's no longer an issue about electric cars or electric anything. We've got cheap, free power all over the world. We have created an opportunity for us to bring power to parts of the world that don't have it right now. You know, there are still parts of Texas that don't have electric power. There's certainly parts of the world that don't have it. So you've opened up new resources and new capabilities. Not only have you made the world better from a humanitarian standpoint, we have expanded those resources. We have increased the pie for all humanity. And it's an application of all those technologies. That's what we have the potential to do, not just here at Port San Antonio, but in San Antonio, to be truly seen as the world leaders for that.
Jim, it is not often that I am at a loss for words. I think people watching and knowing me will attest to that, but that legitimately just blew my mind. I know Reckon Point. I had really great conversations with +1 Robotics in a podcast, announcing some really fun stuff and telling their story. But bringing those things all together, and then also talking about what Wex Foundation is doing. Again, there's that vision, there's that placemaking capability that you have to see what could be done with the ingredients available to you, literally, to make something truly, truly special happen. And I'm sure everyone watching right now has probably got kind of like the same slack-jawed look on their face that I did as you were talking about it, just going, we had no idea that that was there. And that's exactly why these conversations are so important. You've done a tremendous amount of work with you and your team at Port San Antonio in letting people know this is a place of innovation and advanced development and thinking and R&D. But to now hear tangible components being put in place, I mean, I could easily draw that line right there to see something like that taking off. And to know that San Antonio could have a place in those kinds of conversations, I wouldn't even have thought to dream it, right? Based on growing up here and living here. So I think that might be one of your superpowers there in terms of how you've been able to help shape and kind of lead Port San Antonio is, again, seeing the future and the potential in places that's maybe not necessarily visible to everybody else. So I think that's fantastic. I should probably say you'll probably want to put a blog or some kind of story out because everyone's going to be knocking on your door asking for more details about all of those companies and the really, really cool work that's going on there. You mentioned Plus One being a really great story and Reckon Point being an aviation weekly. And now I believe just this last week, there was the announcement of the eSports arena as well. There have been a lot of accolades and a lot of big program and project wins. What do you feel is that key driver that is really fueling Port San Antonio to move forward and to get these kinds of wins and to attract this kind of talent? Is there a common thread that you feel is there kind of embodied in that space of what you're building?
Yeah, there is. And it's our only lever is to build things. This kind of gets back to that Disney concept. We can build the environment. We need somebody to come in and actually be the attraction, the showcase. I'm not developing supervised autonomy. I can barely drive my own truck, much less go out there and develop a system to do it. But if you create the environment and the connections, then the magic starts to happen. Part of creating the environment is letting people know that they can do it. And this is our biggest challenge in San Antonio. There is too much of a sense of we can't do this. And I will tell you, once I got this job, it was March of 18, I got the interim job. I had the opportunity to go speak to one of the neighborhood associations. And a very wonderful, I call her little old lady, she's probably not much older than me, came over. And I had just talked about a lot of what's going on this campus and where we wanted to take the campus. And she said, "Jim, you're doing the wrong thing." And I said, "Why?" And she said, "None of those jobs are jobs for people from San Antonio." And I looked at her kind of slack-jawed and I said, what do you mean? And she said, "You need to be creating jobs that people from here can do, not jobs that we're going to bring people in from around the world." And it took me back a little bit. And I said, "Well, I hear you, but we got a company called IP Secure. It was started by a guy named Jesse Rodriguez out of this neighborhood. And Jesse knew absolutely nothing about computers or cyber. He was a radio tech at Kelly. And when Kelly closed, he took what little money he'd managed to scrimp up and started a company called MasterClaim, which was just a custodial company. But he hired custodians who had security clearances. And if you've ever been in a classified space, they get just as dirty and even smellier than a regular space. And he could go in there and get those spaces cleaned. Developed an expertise in cleaning out data centers and rooms that most custodial companies couldn't get into. That gave him more resources. He met some people, including Rich Valdez here, local young man. Created a company called IP Secure. IP Secure is now part of the systems coordination team with Northrop Grumman on unified platform, building the backbone for the DoD and our allied nations on non-kinetic systems, electronic warfare systems. There's a company called CNF Technologies. 25 years ago, their CEO, Roxanne, was teaching 6th grade just up the street. Her husband was working here at Kelly doing something. I'm sure it was super secret and super important. Decided he wanted to start a little consulting company, little engineering consulting company. Well, fast forward, they're one of our superstars on this campus. They're one of the superstars in San Antonio. CNF Technologies has a $1 billion contract with Air Force Research Laboratory. They're doing some of the most advanced work on systems and communications anywhere on this planet. They are hiring up more people than you ever wanted to imagine. Taking it down from cyber, I remember, and this was before I came to the port, when I was just a lowly lawyer for the aviation industry. When Boeing sent the first 747-8 to San Antonio, they could have picked anywhere in the world. They picked San Antonio's site. One of the young men who came down with that project was a young man who'd gone through the Alamo Academies program and grown up not too far away from this campus. There is no reason you can't do anything. And that's the emphasis of this innovation center. And I don't mind telling you, I stole this idea straight from Disney. So when you come in to see it, you're going to come down General Hudnall, and you are going to drive past all these brand new buildings with these big corporate logos on them, national companies, global companies, local companies. You're going to see the big Boeing facility and Standard Aero facility and a bunch of airplanes. And you're going to go into this exciting facility with lights and sirens and everything else. It's going to inspire people. And our hope is that of the hundreds of thousands of people that go through, just 1% of them say, that's something I'm interested in. Well, there's an educational component. There's a connection component. You can come back and make this a career. We've got the educational center on the campus. We've got the schools on the campus. We want to keep connecting them up. And then as they drive out, they're going to drive past companies like One Robotics, Knight Aerospace, the local companies that have made good out of this. We're telling that story. Flip it around. When you come onto this campus, when we bring employers and prospects in, we bring them in the other way. We want them to come down 36th Street, and the first thing they see when they come into campus is our focus on education and our focus on attracting and developing that workforce. Because that's the first question they ask. It's not, how much money can you give me to be here? It's, where am I going to find the talent to make this happen? And we want them to see +1 and Knight and the Education Center and SAMSAT before they see the companies that we've brought. And you see, Dax, what's this got to do with downtown? What's this got to do with what's there? Look at the universities and the capabilities that we have in this community. What UTSA is doing with the School of Data Sciences and the National Security Collaboration Center and CyManu, the Cyber Manufacturing Innovation Institute, is some of the most tremendous work that is going on anywhere in the country on that electronic and security capability. That is a major part of what we're doing. To be able to say the young people that we're trying to inspire here can go to UTSA, can go to Our Lady of the Lake, A&M San Antonio, and can acquire the talent and capabilities they need to do this work, is a major leg up. There is some tremendous work going on in entities like Scale Work and Geekdom Downtown. You know this with TechBlock, where we want to have access to that talent and that capability. People who can write the front-end program, the open source program, the open cloud program that allows us to create the interface that can be used for these technologies. So it's about inspiring people. It's about connecting people. I could go on about this for hours. I can't even remember what the question is. But the common theme there is connection. It's connecting and converging people. And that gets lost sometimes in tech. There's this perception that tech is cold, automation takes jobs away from people. If it's done correctly, what you're doing is you're creating more jobs for people because you are capturing more global resources. And as you capture more resources, you generate more wealth, which generates more opportunities.
And I think you are building a tremendous cornerstone of that principle right here in San Antonio. We're already seeing it in action. You've added thousands of jobs in less than a couple of years. You're giving space and place to emerging startups to gain a foothold, find success, meet and mingle with customer bases that traditionally they wouldn't have had access to or would have been really difficult to get to. And just again, hearing those components and understanding that people are at the core and your focus on people, again, we're starting to connect more of these dots of this change agent perspective where you can see what the real ingredient and the power and strength of it is. And it's that community. It's the folks' connectedness to each other. I absolutely love that. And it's really even greater that we see it in action. This isn't something that's like a PowerPoint presentation or a TEDx talk. This is actually, hey, we've been doing it. Thanks for paying attention, everybody. It's 2020. Like, we're doing it right now, right here. Come join the fun. I think I really am hopeful that this is going to help a lot more people develop an understanding and awareness of what's going on at Port San Antonio and understand the opportunity and how, while maybe not the initial intent of folks during the decade of downtown, I think it's very clear between people working between those departments and downtown and even in some of the Midtown Pearl area, how really dependent we are on each other, how intertwined we are with our work now. And this is going to be really exciting moving forward. And it's with that thought that I'd love to kind of conclude our interview and ask you one final question, which is, we talked about space as kind of the final frontier, no pun intended for any of the Star Trek fans there. But I'd love to know, what do you feel is the next horizon point for Port San Antonio? What's that next immediate big project or program or industry that you really are starting to set your eyes on and going, I can work with that. There's something really nice there.
It is space. It's not necessarily Space Force, but it's space because we are moving into a world where the connections need to become wireless. Wired connections, hard connections are inherently expensive and they're inherently risky. They're single points of failure. And so we're going to see more and more wireless connectivity. That's going to be starting with communications connectivity, 5G and wireless. It's going to move into wireless power generation. And Dax, people always say I'm crazy when I talk about wireless power generation. You've seen those Tesla coils.
Yeah.
It's wireless power transmission. We've known about it for over 100 years now, 120 some odd years. As you get into that, the control of those systems become much more important. The network security and control, and incorporating into all the existing buildings, vehicles, everything else, the capability of operating under that new system. It's opening up a multi-trillion-dollar addressable market. The exciting thing about that is it's not just Port San Antonio's core competency, it's San Antonio's core competency. Yeah. To solve this, we got to find a bunch of people with different talents and capabilities. It's going to involve people over at SWRI who understand satellites and lasers and everything else. It's going to involve the people here who understand how to put that into airplanes and network security. It's going to involve downtown and the medical center. If done correctly, if we'd had this conversation 20 years ago, I would have been something of a Luddite. I would have been very, very concerned about increasing automation. I would have believed that ultimately it was going to be a good thing, but I would have been very, very scared about the pain that you go through. Mm-hmm. Right now, we're going through that pain. We're on the verge of a new world. And the part that excites me, I'm only going to give you a teaser on this. Pretty soon, there's going to be an announcement about a application of laser and robotic technology into aviation that's going to get worldwide attention. What's not going to get as much immediate attention is that application not only saves the airlines money, but saves about 40 tons of carbon dioxide per airplane per time and eliminates some of the most hazardous work that people have to do on those systems, to say nothing of eliminating a whole bunch of water pollution issues.
Wow.
It is world changing. Knight Aerospace and their ability to create a flying hospital, to put that medical pod into an airplane and bring medicine anywhere on the planet within 17, 18 hours is world changing. The ability to bring resources to people that need them not only helps create better living conditions, But there are a bunch of resources that we're going to need on this planet that right now we don't have access to. These wireless systems allow us to have access to those connections. This is what we're on the verge on. So I say space is our next frontier. I'm not sitting here and telling you Space Force is moving to San Antonio or we're launching rocket ships from here. I am going to tell you that the next domain is going to be wireless. And the people in San Antonio, if we can get our act together, work together, leverage the best of what we do and focus on an outcome, there is no reason that this won't be the Silicon Valley for wireless capabilities and expanding opportunities all throughout the world.
Look, I was a believer before, Jim, but now you've got me all kinds of fired up. And I think so many people watching this, and I can already envision the reshares that this will get in terms of the conversation, because you're opening up a whole new dimension of San Antonio's growth and vibrancy and development. And it ties into where we're at currently today at the conclusion of this first decade of downtown, which is we find ourselves on the precipice of workforce development and education and some transit, other things, right? So all those things coming together with an eye towards this kind of industry opportunity and a chance to claim our space in the primary spot. That does not come along very often at all, especially for cities of our size. So I am, for one, incredibly happy and excited that you are the person at the helm over at Port San Antonio, helping direct this, working with the board and representing our community, because you have done, and I cannot, understate it enough, just a fantastic job of showcasing the best of San Antonio's spirit and our people. And I really, really appreciate you taking this time to chat with our audience, share these amazing stories. Guys, you're going to have to go back and watch through this, but we talk about Wrecking Point, Plus One Robotics, Knight Aerospace, CNF Technologies. I mean, there are a ton that you're going to need to go through. And also, if you haven't visited SAMSAT, you should probably start there so you can understand all the wireless technology that Jim was just talking about. Jim, again, thank you so much. Appreciate the time. Everyone, thank you for joining us, and we're going to be starting off with a little Q&A in just a minute. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Dax.